So far we've only considered pure strategies, strategies where players, when they reach an information node, play a particular action with probability 1. That's a special case of what we call a mixed strategy, where a player, when she reaches an information node, chooses a probability distribution with which to play the various actions that are available to her. A pure strategy is a special case of a mixed strategy because the player chooses a probability distribution that places probability 1 on one of the actions and probability 0 on all other actions. Mixed strategies are sometimes motivated by the fact that there exist games that don't have pure strategy Nash equilibria, but they do have mixed strategy Nash equilibria. The matching pennies game in table 24.9 is one such example, and we'll consider that example here. In this game, we both simultaneously call out heads or tails. My goal is to have both of us call out the same thing. Your goal is to have each of us call out something different. If we meet our goals, we get 1. If we don't, we get -1. In this graph, we'll let lambda on the horizontal axis equal the probability that you place on saying heads, and we'll let rho on the vertical axis equal the probability that I say heads. A mixed strategy for each one of us is then simply picking a number between 0 and 1, where that number represents the probability we'll place on saying heads. If you set your lambda to less than 0.5, it means that you're more likely to say tails than to say heads. And since I'm trying to match what you say, whenever you are more likely to say tails than heads, I should say tails for sure. In other words, I should set my rho, the probability of me saying heads, equal to 0. The blue line segment between 0 and 0.5 is then my best response for my rho, given your lambda lies anywhere from 0 to 0.5. If you set lambda to 0.5, it means that you're equally likely to say heads as you are to say tails. And if you're equally likely to say heads or tails, it doesn't really matter which strategy I pick. I might say heads all the time, or tails all the time, or heads half the time and tails half the time, or anything in between. All of those would be best responses to you saying heads half the time. But if you set lambda to anything greater than 0.5, it means that you're playing heads more often than you're playing tails. And if you're playing heads more often than you're playing tails, then I should say heads, because I'm trying to match what you're going to say. Thus, I should set rho, the probability that I'll play heads, equal to 1 whenever you set lambda anywhere above 0.5.